Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. This is the Eccentric Mind Podcast with George Hernandez. Thank you guys so much for tuning in today. Alright, I'm going to get straight into it because there's actually this really profound story that I saw when I was very, very young. And it's regarding King Griffey Jr. If you don't know who King Griffey Jr. is, he used to be a center fielder for the Major League Baseball. One of the greatest players of all time. Everyone's favorite player. You're not going to ask an 8-year-old who their favorite player is without getting a response of King Griffey Jr. He was just iconic. The kid, number 30, hitting 650 bombs, right? He is very well known, and he's well known not only for his ability to play, but he's also well known for his character. Very professional, very humble, very kind, and overall just a professional on and off the field, but also just an extremely big time figure for all of the younger generation and the generation that came up. And there's a really unique story that I saw when I was like 7 years old, 8 years old on SportsCenter. And it related to King Griffey Jr. bought the entire team burgers and fries. The entire team. Don't just think the players and the coaches and the staff. Think everyone. Think the GMs. Think the kids from the players. Think the janitors. Think, everyone. He bought everyone burgers and fries. And upon gathering everyone together in the locker room and the clubhouse, he left. He had one singular fry and he left. And the media portrayed him as some sort of diva, right? But around this time, he was in year 14 of his career. It was well past his time to be a diva at that point. But also, people who knew King Griffey Jr. knew this wasn't his character, okay? So, it was the media portraying him in a very wrong manner. At least that's the way I perceive it. Now, I kind of want to just talk about the story a little bit. Let's kind of dig into it. So, King Griffey Jr. buys the entire team burgers and fries. And then, upon gathering everyone together, he eats one fry and he leaves. Okay? Now, let's just look at what was done. The act itself. He buys the team burgers and fries. Okay, so as we can all agree upon, that is a good deed and that is a good act. When you buy somebody something, that is a very kind act, and regardless, everyone feels good about that. Everyone wants to thank somebody. Everyone wants to give recognition for the person that bought them something, right? And nowadays, it seems like people that do a good deed feel the need that they need to whip out their phone and kind of portray that good deed onto everybody else. So, for example, everyone who gives money to the homeless, rather than just giving the money to the homeless because they feel the need to do it, they whip out their phone and prior to giving them the money, they record themselves giving them the money. So now it's not coming from a place of authenticity. It's not coming from a place of genuity. It's actually coming from a place of, hey, you know what? I want you guys to see that I'm a good person, which actually just excludes the fact that you're a good person. Rather than trying to convey yourself as a good person, just be a fucking good person, right? Not only that, you're not giving anymore. Okay? The act of giving the person the $100, the $20, the $50, whatever it may be, it now becomes an exchange of value. So now I'm giving you the $100, but in exchange, I'm getting all of these eyes looking upon me and giving me Instagram points. The fact that now they think I'm a good person because I gave you this money. When in reality, if you just gave without any sort of expectation of receiving in return, you'd be a much better person. Okay? So the act of actually pointing out your phone makes you much more of a shittier person because now you want people to see that you're a good person. But guess what? Good people give without any sort of expectation of receiving in return. So you give that money because you wanted to give the money, not because you want Jenna to see your Instagram story and that you're a good person and you want her to like you. Like, that is not what we do. Now, I want to reframe that back to the King Griffey Jr. story. So let's go back to it, okay? So King Griffey Jr. gets the team burgers and fries. He eats one fry and he leaves. Okay? Now, before this, nobody had been able to thank him because he was gathering everyone into the group, into the clubhouse. And before they were able to give him that exchange of thankfulness, being able to thank him for the kind deed and the kind act that he did, he left prior to them giving them that exchange or giving them that gratefulness or that thankfulness. So he left. And now the media portrayed him as a diva, but in my mind, and the way I see it, is King Griffey Jr. did the act itself because he wanted to do it. He thought in his head, you know what, I want to do that, so I'm going to do that. And before anybody else was able to thank him, he left before they did. So he didn't do it so that he could be thanked by everyone. He didn't do it so that he can get the recognition from everyone else that he was a good person. He left knowing that the act that he did was good itself. And he didn't need the gratification, or he didn't need to be recognized for it, because the act itself was already so good that he left prior to being recognized, because the act of giving itself was the reward. The recognition is never the reward. The act of doing without giving or without expecting any sort of expectation of receiving in return is the reward itself. And I think we have it so flipped now, where we do these things, but in exchange we want something of value in return. And I think the only way to really be a good person is by just giving without any sort of expectation of receiving in return. No recognition, no thank you, no money, no tip, nothing. Just doing because you want to fucking do. And that's exactly what King Griffey Jr. did in this case. He had the thought, he had the idea, and he took action, and he persisted, and he did it, and then he left because the act itself was the reward. So stop giving without any sort of stop giving with some sort of underlying motive, because it defeats the purpose. It defeats the tax reward that you gain from doing the act itself. I always like to think that, I wrote it down here. Let's see if I can find that one. There's this underlying tax reward that you receive upon doing something because your heart wants to do it. And upon taking the action and fulfilling that action, you get some sort of emotional connection and an emotional hit that doesn't compare from doing it because you have a preconceived motive behind taking the action. So just by doing without any sort of expectation in return is far better than doing something because you want something in return. So I hope that helped, and I hope that kind of gave you some clarity. And yeah, man, that's pretty much it. Like, the reason I brought this one up today is I was writing this down in my book, and I've written this story plenty of times on Twitter. But I love this story because it just goes to show just how much of a humble human being King Griffey Jr. was. But it also just goes beyond the fact that giving without any sort of expectation or receiving in return is by far the way you should be going about. I mean, do your own business, right? But I think it makes you look far better and more authentic and more genuine. Like, you don't need to prove to anybody you're a good person. Just fucking be a good person, right? And yeah, that's the reason I brought this one up today too. Not only because I love the story, but because I had that case myself where that happened at work. I saw people drop boxes, right? And immediately just took off, went to the boxes, picked them up, and then I left. I went, like, I was driving in my little cart, left the cart in an aisle because I zoomed to the point to help the person out, and then giving them the help or whatever they needed, and then I left. I didn't want the recognition. I didn't want to be thanked. I just kind of left. And upon leaving, I was like, like, that was the reward. Like, helping somebody because you get the urge, and because you can help them, and because it's an immediate thought to you, helping them is the reward. The reward isn't what you get in return. The reward is actually doing the kind, good deed itself. So take with what you want, dissect what you want, question what you want, but this has been the Eccentric Mind Podcast, and I hope you have a fantastic day.